Now we've got here a workflow for the ControlNet, and for this one we've got a Canny which allows us to extract an image, a Canny image, and then we have the outputs. One output here is the unrefined, and then we have the refined one. So this is a fairly complex workflow which I should explain a little bit about before we explore some other details. But before we do that, let's go and take a look at some of the images that I got. So essentially we're starting off with this image here, and this image is basically a woman sitting on the ground, computer or laptop on her lap, making some sort of goofy sign. And we managed to get this one for the first render, and then the one with the refined. So you can see the refined is not actually adding very much at all. And then the refined one, then this one, which is a tech girl or tech nerd, supposed to be wearing cropped jeans, and it's given her a denim top, which I suppose is close enough to a cropped jean. And then another version with a different seed. Then we moved from the tech nerd genre to an armed woman, someone who is ready for battle, and then more ready for battle females. But this one I think is actually a little bit more glamorous. She's not only ready for battle, she's looking glamorous with it. And I adjusted the Canny a little bit, and we got a few more, including this one. I think this one was pretty interesting because it was pretty much the same prompt as the other ones. And then I tried a different model, which is different from the one that we looked at before. And sometimes it gave us black images, but we equally got something that looked pretty decent from the one that we're going to look at now. So this is the original image, and the file that we're working with is actually a small version of the larger file, the 5 gigabyte file that we're working with. So you may want to try some of these smaller ones. It's actually experimental ones, and I want to just give you some kind of guidance as to where these ones are found, because they're still experimental and they're not available as part of the mainstream. So you can see here the ControlNet Canny SDXL 1.0. This is the one that we downloaded and we're going to use for the most part. But there are new ones which came through, and these ones are being listed separately. So I will give you a link to this page, which is the page for the diffusers. And what they're saying here is SDXL control nets. We are training control nets for Stable Diffusion XL, small size control nets. We're experimenting with training smaller control nets that can still retain their control capabilities. This is the what they're saying is they would like you to give them feedback, and the files are listed down here. Now the files are much smaller. So instead of 5 gigabytes, we've got 320, 545, and we've got 320 and 545. So as you can see, we've got both Canny and depth. So you can try using the depth map or the depth map control net, as well as the Canny for SDXL 1.5. Now, it's by no means guaranteed that they will work, but the number that are successful will increase over time. Now, going back to where we were, I want to just go through this particular workflow, just explain how everything is lined up. Broadly speaking, the workflow runs from left to right. So we start off by calling up the base safe tensor for SDXL, and then we open up this image, and you can choose your option here. You can choose whatever image. This particular one will remember a list of images that you've chosen before. So if you're working with several images, it will give you an option to pick a previous image that you used before. We've got the Canny here, which is extracted very quickly, and we can play around with the threshold for the Canny, low threshold, high threshold. These work differently from the ones that I gave you for the LoRa file. So this is slightly different setup with different thresholds, different maximum, different minimum thresholds. I think with the LoRa ones, I think the maximum was 255 and the minimum was 0. With this one, you can go higher than 255 for the high threshold. So it's a completely different setup. The apply ControlNet gives us a strength, so we can basically increase that, I think, to about 1, or might be able to go higher, can't quite remember. And then we have the prompts. Now the prompts are playing a very significant role, as you can see, particularly with the strength of the ControlNet just set to 0.75, but obviously feel free to experiment with that if you want to. Now, as far as the MT latent, I'm going for 1024 by 1024, and all of the images that I chose to use were 1024 by 1024. So I just edited them inside of Photoshop just to get them to the same size. You can go above 1024 by 1024, but at some point things begin to fall apart in SDXL. I think going for maybe a wide screen, maybe about 2 megapixels, I think that's about the maximum that I've managed to get working without things falling apart. But if you go, say, to 4 megapixel, 248 by 248, 2048 by 2048, it's not going to work very well for you. You kind of need to stick around that 1 megapixel to 2 megapixel maximum in order to get things to work well. And some of the renders do fall apart even before 2 megapixels. But what we have here is the size of the image. We've got a clip text for encoding the negative. And here I've just put my standard sort of negative prompts. The positive prompt is split into 2. So some of you might not have seen this before, but the clip text encode for SDXL. And we call this up by just basically, you can double click and clip text encode. It might not come up immediately, so you might need to search for it. And we've got one for SDXL, the base one, and one for the refiner, which I'm using. So this is a much more complex situation than we've seen before. Now you've got some settings here which are, you can leave these at default. I wouldn't recommend going below 1024 by 1024. You can experiment with going up to, say, 2048 by 2048. Sometimes I've got good results that way, but you can leave these at default if you want to. Now these two, sometimes people, there's no strong guidance as what to do with the two settings here. This one here is the G setting for the positive prompt. This one is the L setting for the positive prompt. So there are two clip neural networks that SDXL uses. The G network is the larger one and is the dominant one, and the L network is the less dominant one. It's a smaller neural network and it's trained on less data. So with these ones, what I would do is probably put the most important prompts in the G network, in the top network. And then what I tend to do is to either put identical ones in the lower one, or I will put things to do with style, context, and not the most important. The most important ones always go in the G one. Sometimes the important ones will go in the L. And what I tend to do is to put within the L style related. So here I've put detailed, textured, ornate, studio lighting, luxurious. And this one here is the inferior one. It doesn't always influence the image. Sometimes it does. If you definitely want something to influence the image, you want to put them in both. So if you wanted, say, you wanted a very detailed image, absolutely certain, you want to put that in both of them. When it comes to the now let's move on before coming to the other clip network. We've got a K sampler, standard K sampler, where we end at 40. So that's a fairly high setting for the ControlNet nets, because they tend to be very resource heavy. They will use up all your graphics processing capacity, and 40 is fairly high. But I think for this powerful ControlNet, what you really want to do is to use it to get the most professional looking images. So that probably means working with the large ControlNet. I mean, I'm working here with the smaller ControlNet because I was testing it to see if it worked. But you probably want to work with the main ControlNet, the 5 gigabytes one. Or if you can't really run that one, you want to run the smaller ones. But it may be better in many situations to actually go with the Control LoRa's because they do more or less the same thing. Now we have the second part of the render, which comes on from the K sampler. We connect to an advanced K sampler, and this one is running from 40 to 45. The end step here, which is found in the advanced K sampler, is 10,000, which you're never going to reach. The one that determines where you end is the steps. So we go from 40 to 45. That's where we end. We've got a different seed, which is I find important to have different seeds for the first one and the second K sampler. And add noise is enabled, which is important as well. Now, as far as the obviously we've got the checkpoint here, and really the only refiner checkpoint that I know is the SDXL one from Stability AI. I don't think it's perfect. It's not brilliant, but you know. It's only doing 5 steps, so it's not contributing very much to this image, to this outcome. Now, the clip text encode SDXL for the refiner, this is just a single box. And what I've done here is to put the details from the L section, from the lower section. So that's the somewhat less important. And it doesn't contain details about what I want to see. It contains details about the way I want it to render. So I don't want the refiner doing too much to create new detail. I want it just refining the detail. That's why I've chosen this particular approach. Sometimes it makes sense to actually put the entire prompt from both of these into the refiner. But for this one, I found that the refiner was doing weird things, which I didn't want. So I limited the number of steps, and I just gave it a little bit of a detail instruction, just not the core elements that I want to see, but the style of the elements. And I find sometimes the refiner does less harm. Sometimes it can actually damage the image that you've created with the base model. So here I've just given it very limited instructions, very limited activity, and also we've got some of the same negative prompts. One of the things that you'll find here is I've changed the width and the height numbers here to 4096. I think you can go up to 8192. So I'm kind of working in multiples of 1024, which is the size of the image. That seems to work out fine. I don't think it is a huge deal whether you change these numbers, but I believe they need to go up in multiples of 64 for the numbers to be valid. But in any case, I usually leave these at 4096 and 4096. It doesn't seem to do any harm, and it might actually do some good to have higher numbers. Certainly I found experimenting with these numbers here, making those 8192, 8192 or 2048 can actually produce a slightly different image, and sometimes that might overcome some little problems that I found in some of the images I've worked with. So that's basically a fairly complex workflow, which of course you're free to experiment with. The A score is something which deals with aesthetics, and 6 seems to be a good number there, but you're free to experiment obviously with this particular workflow. Then we have the output for the base layer, and then the output for the refined layer. Now that's basically how it works, and what I've done is to run a few images, and you can see the kind of results that you can get with the different prompts. If we actually take a look at the prompts, because I don't think you'll get a chance to see these again, we can go to the history and let's see. So for this one, we've got Vengeance Queen, royal clothing, guns and ammunition, conflict themes, attractive, photorealistic, and it's given us this lady here. with the briefcase. It got very inventive with the laptop and made it different things in different images. Now this one was using one of the newer models, so I went for, let's see, one of the small 1.0 small diffusion control nets. So these are one of the ones I was telling you about, the experimental ones, and it didn't work out too well, and that might have been due to I think that was probably due to the model, because everything just looks slightly weird here. Can't quite remember the prompt there, but you get the idea. The prompt will influence the outcome. If you keep the control net strength low, that will give you a little bit more freedom to come up with different outcomes. And sometimes I find there's a lot of impact by changing the sampler. So changing it from Euler sometimes to one of the other options has a big impact on the outcome. So feel free to experiment with this one. This one can produce very good outcomes, and I think it's one where if you have a more powerful computer, you can produce quite a lot of different variations and see which one works best for what you want. What I'll do is give you this particular one with the settings that we've just looked at, or rather I'll go to the final one and we'll give you this one with the settings that we've already looked at. Feel free to play around with it and experiment. That is the Canny one.